Hi, everyone. I'm HuffPost reporter Lee Blickley, and Hulu's new series, The Act, tells a true crime story of Gypsy Rose Blanchard, a very ill young woman who is cared for by her devoted mom, Dee Dee. They seem like the perfect mother-daughter pairing, but what was happening behind the closed door of their pretty pink house was nightmarish. Gypsy wasn't actually sick at all. Her mom just wanted her to be. Joey King and Calum Worthy are here to talk about their roles in The Act, but first, let's see a trailer.
This is the state's case against Gypsy Rose Blanchard.
She's got paraplegia, epilepsy, heart murmur, and she's allergic to sugar. Everything I do for her.
My mom is my best friend. All she wants to do is keep me safe.
Gypsy!
Have you been able to confirm the girl's medical history?
Which part?
Any of it.
That's what being a mom is, never being sure you're doing the right thing, but doing it anyway.
Out with the Children's Division of Missouri Social Services.
Open. Gypsy's got the mind of a 7-year-old.
How old are you?
Oh, she's 15, born in 1995.
I thought you said I was born in 1993.
I'm just going to ask you a few questions, all right? Can you read?
Do you love me?
What are you giggling about?
I met my Prince Charming. Hi.
I never once disrespected my mama the way you do.
I'm so trapped. I can't tell anyone.
You can tell me.
Nobody's gonna ever do more for you than I do.
She's never gonna let us be together.
Sooner or later, everybody knows everything about everyone.
Gypsy Rose Blanchard, how do you plead?
Let's welcome Joey King and Calum Worthy. I don't know how to be so peppy after that, like, super dark trailer. So this was a phenomenon when it first came out in a BuzzFeed article written by Michelle Dean, who is actually a showrunner on the show. Had you guys heard about the article before signing on for The Act?
Had you?
I had, yeah. I knew about the story, I knew about the article as well, and the documentary. I'd heard a lot about this case before.
I knew of the story before I got the audition, and then once I got the audition, I watched the documentary, read the article, and was like completely overwhelmed with the amount of crazy information I found.
Yeah. And what was the audition like for this? What did you have to do to kind of prove that you could play Gypsy Rose?
Right? Like, I can't, like, wow. I'm, like, super stoked they hired me. It was just a normal audition process, but I was really nervous. And I usually don't get very nervous before I do auditions much anymore, but I was real nervous. And it was interesting. They didn't have me do the voice in the audition. And after I booked the job, I was like, guys, I think I should do the voice, you know? They're like, can you do it? And I was like, yeah. They're like, oh, great. Then do that. So that's what I did.
Because it's pretty amazing when I've seen a few episodes of the show and it's really fantastic. But you have absolutely transformed for this role, from the voice, and of course you shaved your head.
My next role, I'm playing Calum Worthy in a documentary about Calum Worthy.
Yeah.
It's the unauthorized story, though. I'm not happy they're making it.
That's why you guys are doing the press tour together, right? Just for research sake.
Yeah. No, I'm shadowing his every movement. We actually try to start like saying things at the same time, like. When we are doing interviews. It's like, wow.
Wow, you guys have a connection.
Yeah.
I can really feel
it.
Yeah.
She's going to nail it. She's going to do a great job.
Do a great job.
Yeah. I'm glad that you guys can have fun with this because it is a very deep, dark show. Yeah. So was it a vibe like this on set when you were filming to kind of lighten the mood?
I think because it's such heavy subject matter, Calum and I really did have a nice time being able to release with laughter and have a fun time while we were on set. Because we had so many heavy scenes together, and we would really we definitely would dive deep and be very, very focused. But once it was all over, when we had like a really long day together, it'd just be nice to look at some memes with him and release from the day.
Especially, Calum, your character, Nick Godejohn, is Gypsy Rose's boyfriend who kind of becomes a huge part of the case and is the killer. This is kind of a different role for you, I would say. So what was it like to get into the mindset of playing someone like Nick?
It was really intense. I mean, the thing that I had to tap into was really making sure he came across as a complete human and not just someone who committed a crime. And that's what I loved about this whole script was it really looks at these characters in a very complex way. And it's not just like a retelling of a normal crime story. They really dig deep into these characters. And that's what I did for this character, too. I dig into some pretty deep, dark places, but it was so much fun working with her because
so incredible in the show. I mean, he like every time he would transform, like he would just like get into the zone and become Nick, and it was like so chilling. I remember the first time, like the first scene we ever had together, I was like, oh my God, he's so good.
Yeah,
this is the first time we've actually talked as ourselves to each other.
Yeah, it's so, yeah.
Well, you also, when you guys were shooting, I mean, a lot of it is behind a screen because you guys are chatting over the internet. So how did you guys shoot those scenes? Did you have FaceTime on set, or was it, were you shooting in one room and you were in another room and kind of had to have that separation?
Yeah, for those scenes we shot them separately, but we'd had some other scenes before then, where we got to meet
we shot
and actually
a little bit out of order.
Yeah.
But but with the FaceTime scenes, the Skype scenes, he was just like in the next, like in the same building, just in a different room. So we still got to see each other, which was nice.
Yeah.
And so what kind of research did you guys do? Because your two characters that you play in the show are still alive. Were you able to talk to them at all? Or what is the situation there? Were you able to call Gypsy at all?
No, I was not able to get in contact with her. And but we were really fortunate because one of our, like you said, Michelle Dean, who was one of our showrunners and producers and writers, she wrote the BuzzFeed article that completely explained the story and blew up. And she had contact with Gypsy, extensive contact. They did interviews together. She had to talk to her for the documentary purpose. But so I would go to her for a lot of information. I think we both did as well. Go to her for a lot of research information.
Yeah. Did you watch any clips or things like that to get into the sense of Nick and who he was as a human being?
There's only a few videos of him, and I just rewatched them a million times. I think most of the views on them are just me watching them in my hotel room, trying to get into it.
It's me. And you guys get to work with Patricia Arquette in this, who is phenomenal as Dee Dee. What was that like, and what did she maybe teach you on set in this, and being a part of this kind of show?
I'm so thankful I got to work with someone like Patricia. I learned so much from her, not just as an actor, but as just like a human being. She's such a good, generous person. And so, she was just so helpful. And I think what I loved so much about her was how non-judgmental she was. Because it was such a we had so many hard scenes together, and knowing that any idea I would present or any idea she would present or any sort of thoughts we had, it was never judged. It was always supported and welcomed, and I trusted her completely.
Mm-hmm. And how about you? There's I think a scene, right? Or a few scenes you get to work with her.
Yeah, well, one of my first days on set, she got nominated for a Golden Globe. Yeah. So I thought, well, that's no pressure.
Typical Patty, right?
Yeah. And she was just phenomenal to work with. She was amazing. The only disappointing side is I didn't get more scenes with her because of what happens in the story. So, but she was phenomenal. She was great.
It's hard to talk about the story because I'm assuming people know how it ends, but you don't want to give any spoilers either, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because it's one of those things where a quick Google can fix that, but at the same time, I guess we don't want to give it away, but we kind of all know what happens.
Yes. And of course, I'm sure a part of this is fictionalized as well, because you can get a sense for what Gypsy Rose has said about what went on in the house. Yeah. But I'm sure, Nick Antosca and Michelle Dean sort of played with
who are amazing, by the way.
Yeah. So they're fantastic.
Yeah, so thankful we got to work with people like them. I felt really supported as an actor. But yeah, we definitely took some creative liberties, but I definitely do believe we tried to keep it as accurate as possible, but of course there's creative liberties whenever you're making a television series to move the story forward and make Calum look better. Well, no.
That's true.
So what was it like the first day rolling onto that set with that pink house and the decor inside there and just the feeling? Did you immediately fall into Gypsy Rose and her character?
What's crazy is I remember the first time I stepped onto that set and the last time, and like the difference in how I felt both times. Like the energy in like pulsing through my body when I first walked in there. I was so nervous and so excited and just was like, I really want to get this right and I don't want to like, you know, mess it up. And I was just so nervous. And then I remember our last day, I took like 20 minutes and the house was completely dark and empty and no one was there. And I was on the soundstage alone. I just walked through the house like I had like a little cry to myself because it was just such an intense experience with so many amazing people. It was hard to say goodbye to, but yeah, that first moment was really surreal for me, and I'll never forget it.
Yeah, what made you so nervous about this role? Was it something that maybe you haven't, you know, played somebody like this on screen before that gave you those nerves a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I've never played a character like Gypsy, and I've never had to really transform myself for a role before until now. This was the most vulnerable I've ever felt doing a role, being able to like completely strip away all vanity and just dive into a completely different person. I think that, along with the added pressure of her still being, you know, her being a real person that's alive now that I'm portraying, who's in prison. Like, there was just so many things that I wanted to do while playing her, and yeah, hopefully it comes across.
Oh, I think you're phenomenal in this. You do such a great
Thank
job.
you. Thanks.
What was it? I'm sure you too, when you saw her on set as Gypsy Rose, was it kind of like, wow, she's transformed?
Yeah, it was very impressive.
Compliment me, go.
Okay.
Compliment your co-star.
No, it was. I remember. I think you remember this. After our first scene that we did together, we finished the take, and it was very emotional, the scene. And I remember like we went cut, and I'm like, "You're really good."
He did say that, and I was like, "What? You're really good." And thus we became besties.
Yeah, I was just so impressed because I'd been obsessing over this story for so many months leading up to this, that to see her actually be Gypsy was really phenomenal.
Yeah, let's talk about the story because it really happened, and that's kind of what's effed up about it. I can curse on internet, but I mean, this is an intense situation, and we've kind of seen our culture's fixation with like this Munchausen by proxy syndrome. We've had Sharp Objects, and of course this story. When you first got this, the script and started delving into this, what kind of bothered you the most about this story and getting into this world for this to shoot the show?
What really shocked me was, I mean, since it is such a character study in this project, is that you really get to learn more about these characters before you learn about some of the more uncomfortable parts of the characters. So you start to really feel for them as people, and then learning what they end up doing and seeing why they get there is a really interesting process. And I think that's the thing that it becomes so uncomfortable when you're learning more about them.
Yeah. Anything for you, Joey?
I think that I think that what's crazy about the fixation on Munchausen by proxy is that it's kind of just now coming into light, because I feel like people didn't really know about it before this case came around, because most of the time, in 1 in 10 cases, Munchausen by proxy is fatal for the victim, and the victim usually doesn't escape, and so we don't hear about these cases because the people just die under their caretakers' watch. And so I think this story really shocked the world and shocked the nation, and I think that's why we see more stories being told about it, because it's just so shocking how frightening it is, and how seemingly kind these caretakers can be, and the people, because what they do is it's everything they're doing is logical to them in their mind. In their mind, they're just like, they've convinced themselves that what they're doing is right, and it's like what needs to be done. And so I think that that's what's so insane about this specific syndrome, is that, you know, it's so hard to detect because the people who are committing it are so sure of themselves.
Yeah. And it is an interesting dynamic, because this story is kind of like a toxic love story in a way between a mother and a daughter, because there's so many times where she can just come out with the truth, but she doesn't. Why do you think that is? Is it the love between them?
I think it's a lot. It's that victim mentality. It's the Stockholm syndrome as well, mixed with Munchausen by proxy. Because I mean, people would like, well, why didn't Gypsy just get up and like tell everyone she could walk? First of all, that's way harder to do than anyone would ever imagine. I mean, like, it's her mother. She loves her mother, and it's also someone that she's trusted her whole life, and it's the only person she has. So just saying like, oh, why didn't you just get out of your wheelchair in front of everybody? That's such a I think it's a cruel thing to say. Like she really felt trapped, like she couldn't. And the logic behind Gypsy's crime that she committed is that she thought, and this is what she said, that she didn't want her mom to go to jail for the things she had done, because her mom had been to jail before and she knew her mom was terrified of jail. And she knew that Gypsy knew that if she ran away, it would emotionally destroy her mother. So she thought, okay, well, those two options are off the table. Then I just need to get rid of her. Yeah. And in her mind, she thought it was the kindest thing to do for Dee Dee, and which is why it's such a heartbreaking story, because she couldn't live a normal life with her mother in it. She couldn't find a way to do that. It's really, really sad. Yeah,
because it is, what her mother was doing was so bad. What she was doing to Gypsy was so bad, but she was also committing a giant fraud. So.
Yeah, so much fraud. It's crazy.
So much fraud.
So much fraud.
Did you feel this way when you signed on to it, that it was kind of like this weird coming of age story in a way? Because it is, I find that the show is very much focused on Gypsy and her experience going through this. Did you get a sense like it was a coming of age story in a way?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the story would work even without the true crime element. Like if it wasn't about these people, I think the story of just a girl learning about life is almost what the show really is about, and then adding on these other elements just makes it so much richer at the same time. And when they talked about our characters, when I first met with Michelle, one of the creators, she really emphasized that they want the story of their love to be sweet and to not to come across as strange in any way. And I really liked that. I really responded well to that.
Yeah.
And I think it's also, it's toxic relationship story between a girl and her mother, but it's also, it shows that every relationship Gypsy tried to insert herself in became toxic. Even the one with Nick, like it started out as like pure love and young love, and we're just FaceTiming and we're keeping it a secret and it's innocent, and it turned into something super sinister. And I think that it's like very, very much about that relationship too.
And talking about that relationship a little bit, this show, talks about Munchausen by proxy, but it also talks about Nick's struggle, I think, with multiple personalities. Did you do any research into that side of it and kind of making sure that you're playing this character as authentically as possible?
Yeah, I felt like I had a lot of pressure to make sure I was accurate in the performance, because he is on the spectrum of autism, and I wanted to make sure that I represented that in an authentic way. Obviously, it's a spectrum, so you can't represent everyone in that category. But I did try to figure out exactly what part of it he was in, and I worked with a center in Long Beach that's an autism center, and worked with them to really hone in the performance and make sure that it was authentic and real. And I just read a ton of literature and watched a ton of documentaries and really tried to get into that mindset.
He's literally like, he's like so incredible in the show. It's insane. I'm just like ugh.
Both of you are really, really, you do such a great job. And I love the show so much because it has this like aspect of that coming of age tale and that love story but it's also like a horror story. It's really terrifying. Yeah. And you've played a few characters in some horror movies yourself.
Yeah, I would never classify this as a horror though, I don't think. I feel like there is horrifying, but I wouldn't classify. Ooh, I got my lipstick on the mic.
Different. It's
I wouldn't classify it as a horror. I think that the story is horrifying though. But I think the most horrifying thing about it is that it's real. Yeah.
Yeah. And talking about bringing the story to an audience, what are you excited for people to take away from it, or are you nervous at all for it to be out in the world, because it is based on a true story and you want to kind of represent the people involved?
Yes, I'm nervous. Are you nervous? I'm nervous.
No, you nailed it. You're fine.
You
don't
shut
be
up.
nervous.
No, you
don't
shut
you be
up.
nervous.
You nailed it.
I'll
fight you.
I was really nervous about the people that knew the people who were playing, seeing it, and making sure, and even possibly even having Nick see me portray him. I wanted to make sure that they felt like we really encompassed everything in who they were, and not just one element, and not just what we see in the media about them, but we really captured their soul and the essence of who they are, and tried to make them seem like they're the heroes in a weird way of their own narrative.
Yeah, I always say that if people who don't sympathize with Gypsy at all, I think that because I've met people who are like, no, she's a cold-blooded killer, and I think they'll really rethink that mentality after watching this show, because, I mean, at the end of the day, she's a victim, you know what I mean? And he's kind of a victim of Gypsy in a way in this story. But yeah, I think what we tried to do was really just accurately represent what happened and who these people were. But yeah, it is nerve-wracking because like what if, like I was thinking about like what if she sees it one day, like I think it'll be really, really hard for her to watch. I think it'll be hard for them to watch other people play them, number one. And also like this is like reliving your truth. And so I can't even imagine what that would be like if they saw it.
Like you said, it's kind of a circle of the victims here. So when you watch the show, who do you think is the villain in this? Or are they all kind of villainous in their own
I
ways?
think Anna Sophia is really...
I think she's the villain.
She's the villain.
She is the villain. No, she's the best. I love her. I think that because our series takes place over a longer period of time, about I think 7 years is how long it takes place over, from the first episode throughout the whole thing. I think you'll have feelings that at certain times that Dee Dee's the villain and you feel horrible for Gypsy, or Gypsy's the villain and you feel bad for Nick and Dee Dee. Like I think that there are a lot of different emotions that you're going to feel towards each character and who you think is the good guy, the bad guy, because it's such a complex story. It's not just he said, she said, and like that's it. It's super complex.
And you mentioned Anna Sophia, who's your neighbor in this. And they're kind of villains in a way, too, because it's funny that no one realized what was going on. But that's kind of the trick, is like you never know what somebody's facing.
You never know what's going on behind closed doors. I think that it's just like it's just the fact that their neighbors had no idea, like, and they were so involved in their lives is just a testament to how willing Dee Dee like was and how far she was willing to go with this, fraud.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, we have some questions from the audience, but first we have a Twitter question for you guys. And I think it's from someone named Joey King.
Ooh?
Hey, I have a question for Joey Calum. Ask Calum if his slender physique is from celery juice or praying to his shrine of Tilda Swinton every night.
Calum?
Well, first of all, I want to thank, was it Joe Y. King? Like Joey and King? Okay.
Must be a big
Joe,
fan of Joey.
Thank you so much for being a fan, first of all. I'll follow you back. And mostly it's the Tilda Swinton element of it. That's always been my major goal, was to represent her as well as I possibly can.
That was a great question. Now we have a few from the audience.
Hi. First of all, I'm such a big fan. And my question, well, because both of you kind of got your start with more like children's programming and like movies, what was like the transition like to more like serious roles?
The transition was it was interesting because like I'm sure you know I did a lot of Disney Channel work, and
nobody knew that, right? No.
And it, I love
very different, I'm sure, from the act.
Very different, very different. I think that the one of the things you learn is that the skills that you use in any project are essentially the same. It's just a different aspect of the art. And when I approached other projects after the show, I just tried to do things that were as different as possible. I would basically say no to any offer that came in because I knew that if they were offering it to me, it was probably something that they wanted me to do from the past, and I didn't want to repeat what I've already done. So I wanted to really have to try for other projects and really try to push the limits.
That's a great way of putting it. Yeah, I totally agree with everything you said. And I think that it's just really exciting as an actor to be able to show, that you can do all sorts of things. Going from things like the kissing booth to things like this. Both are equally as fun and amazing, but they just require like a different skill set and just a little bit, different kind of focus, a little fine tuning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Who's next?
Yeah.
Right here. Don't be shy.
Okay. Hi, guys. My name's Shermeen. So I have a question for Joey, actually. So the role you're playing is very complex. You have a very complex character that you're playing. So what kind of physical and mental, just stress did it take to, undertake this? And what were you able to learn after doing this?
There was a lot of physical transformation elements. I shaved my head. And I wore fake teeth for the show, and changed my voice, sat in a wheelchair, and mentally it was just like a lot of research. Getting into that mindset would be really, really dark sometimes. And mentally it was draining. But I felt so vulnerable every day when I would step on set. But I was so I could not have done it without like genuinely without Calum. I literally feel I relied on him so much when it came to those intense emotional scenes. I knew that he would be there for me, and I hope he knew that I would always be there for him.
Nope.
Okay. And nope. But it was just like, it was a lot. But it was, I also, in saying that, it was really one of the most special projects I've ever worked on experience-wise. The crew that we had while we were shooting was some of the best people I've ever met in my life. And any hard day, I would just like go back to my apartment in Georgia and like watch HGTV and like eat a bunch of chips and just like chill out at the end of a long-ass day.
And just to add on to it, it was incredible seeing her transform, because as soon as she was on set as Gypsy, it was like I was talking to Gypsy. It was amazing. And then, of course, at lunch, you were like your bubbly self, cracking jokes and like making the crew laugh. But then, like while she was Gypsy, it was shocking. Like it made the whole set focus and feel like we're making something really cool.
Oh, thanks.
No problem.
Thank you.
Who's next?
Hey guys. First of all, Joey, I like I saw it on YouTube. You and Channing Tatum has a secret handshake, and I saw it so many times. Oh, thank you. And I think the question's answered already. Do the research and everything, but what is the difficult scene to shoot?
Most difficult scene to shoot?
Yeah.
One that we had together, I think, was one of my most difficult to shoot. It was where we were. It's in like later episodes. I think it's episode 7 where him and I were hiding together in a scene, and it was just really, really emotional. We were like, oh god, and we had to reshoot it too, because they didn't get all the angles they wanted or needed. So we had to we thought we were done with that scene. We were crying all over the place.
Yeah, it was so intense.
It was so intense. I've never slept better in my life after that scene. And then the next day we get to set and they're like, so we've got to do it again. And I was like, wait, what? No. It was insane. But yeah, I think you'll see it. I think episode 7, it's really, really intense. And I'm so thankful I had you, because I was like, I'm freaking out. Like, this scene is like, we both almost passed out. Like, just from the emotional exhaustion it took. Because we were just sitting in the scene.
And we also stayed in it between takes and between setups.
Between setups, yeah. Which is usually something like I wouldn't do, but it was one of those scenes that took so much focus. So we were like in this insane emotional state for...
It was hours. Because I remember them saying, they're like, oh, we're like wrapped, it's done. I was like, wait, don't we have more stuff? They're like, no, it's been like 2 hours of you guys just crying in there.
And we were like, yeah,
and I remember I felt so bad because I was like, I'm sorry, I think a lot of my snot got all over.
It's true. A lot of his snot got all over me, but that's okay, because that is friendship, everybody. Yeah, no, it took a lot of focus, but yeah, that was insane. We both stayed in it all night long. It was crazy.
It was intense. It was intense. I remember the next day our eyes were so bloodshot.
Bloodshot.
They shoot again?
Yeah.
And then they had to,
Yeah, so both days, afterwards, our eyes were so puffy and bloodshot when we woke up the next morning. It was nuts.
It was nuts. But it was actually pretty fun though. Like afterwards, looking back, I'm like,
as an actor, you're like, this is why we do it.
Yeah, it was. It really was.
All the crying. We have time for one more question. Here we go.
Hi, I've written about this case in the past. It's fascinated me for a while, so I really have 2 questions. One came out of the other. First, after inhabiting these characters, how do you think Dee Dee got away with this for so long? Because there is a long evidence trail going to doctors and hospitals. And the second question is, it's somewhat unfair question. How do you think a mother could do something like this to her child? Put feeding tubes in her stomach, for example, and other things that are just too horrific to mention.
I think that the how she got away with it for so long is, in order for someone who's committing a fraud to get away with that fraud, they have to believe it themselves. And Dee Dee truly believed that her daughter was sick and that she was doing the right thing. And that is, I think, how she convinced everyone that she was in the right. Because she really, in her sick mentality, thought that she was right, that what she was doing was 100% correct. So I think that's how she got away with it for so long, because it wasn't acting or putting on a front to her. She thought, she really believed and committed to the fraud 100%. And would you like to answer the second question?
No, I mean, do you want to? Yeah, I mean, sorry, which one was the second question?
The second, God, pay attention.
I was so
I swear,
engrossed
every
in
time we hang
your
out, you
question.
do this.
I was so engrossed in it. Can you repeat the second question again?
Sure. How could a mother do this to her child?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the weird thing about a lot of the motives for these characters is they actually came out of love. And I think that was the most shocking part as I did more research on this. I may have even researched some of your articles. So thank you for writing about it. Is that realizing that it's really because of love that a lot of these people had these motives. And that's really deep and a kind of a shocking truth. 'Cause I think that sometimes people do horrific things because they're evil or bad, but sometimes it's out of good intentions, even in a really strange way.
Yeah, that's such a good way of putting it. Yeah.
Well, if you guys want to learn more about this case, you can watch the show, which comes out March 20th.
Yes.
That's next week. Thank you guys so much for being here and talking about it.
Thank
and
you
good
so
luck
much
with
for having
everything.
us. Yes, first
Thank
two
you so
episodes
much.
come out.